They wanted to take my lawnmower. So I was really glad we recorded this. So the Mongols, we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly with some of the things with the Mongols. So, the good. Now, the Mongols were incredibly innovative, which I think Isha was kind of hinting on earlier with, how they thought of new bad things to do to people. But they're innovative in warfare completely. They were ahead of their time. The hit and run tactics that they would use, their use of cavalry, archers, surprise, sieges, everything. People still study, like people who go and study to be in the military, still study Genghis Khan and what he did. And this is, hundreds of years afterwards. People still look because he was one of the greatest generals of the world. Another really good thing about the Mongols, and we hit on this a lot during our Do Now yesterday, was the religious tolerance. This is something very unique and new for people at this time. Today, people have all sorts of different faiths or beliefs or choose not to have a faith at all. And in our country, that's something that's just normal. If we went and, which we will not do, had like a poll of what people's religious beliefs were just in this class, there are 25 classmates here, and we probably would have, 10, 15, maybe 20 different religious belief systems amongst us. Back then, it was much more homogenous, meaning people were very similar, and if you were different in an area, you often were mistreated. We didn't see this with the Mongols. We see a common legal code going throughout, which is going to be something, just like when we had Hammurabi have his whole empire united by his code, which was a new thing. And then we had the Roman Empire with their empire united. This is a big deal, having large areas of land with a common legal code, and it's going to stick around for a little while. Another good thing about the Mongols is if you were talented, you were able to use your talents. In our song, which we didn't get to sing today because of time, we have the line, saving only who could serve them. If you had a useful talent, you often would be spared. If, Claire Bear's a doctor, they don't want to slice and dice a doctor. They want doctors to go and be able to help people. If Celine is really good at metallurgy, like she's a blacksmith, they're going to want to keep her to do things. If Isha is a ruthless general, they're going to want to keep her to be able to use as a general. Yes, Isha, darling.
So, most of the Mongols, all they do is war. Did they have any like entertainment or arts or music?
We've seen a lot of amazing Mongolian music and entertainment lately, have we not? I mean, that Mongolian throat singing metal that we started our class with. So they're going to have music. They're going to have storytelling. That's going to be a big thing. We don't focus as much on it, especially because the Mongols, as we talked about, as they go into new areas, they are going to really adopt the cultures. So like the Mongols of the Ilkhanate that settled in present-day Iran, the Persian Mongols, basically, they go and they marry into the local populace. They adopt the local culture. So like they take Persian entertainment. Those that are in the Chinese, take Chinese entertainment, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Now, they had their own unique, which we've seen little glimmerings of it with their music, but, high status of women. This is incredibly unique and awesome about the Mongols. Women had a ton of rights. And it kind of makes sense, though. Why? Because if all the men are off to war, someone has to run the place, right? Someone has to be able to do all the jobs. So, like, Claire's shaking her head yes, because she's like, yeah, if my husband and son are out going fighting war, like, I'm not just going to let everything, go to garbage. No, she's going to go do it all. So Mongolian women,
Mr. Kenny, you froze.
military places. We saw it with the
I
Mongols too.
froze.
Yes, Mia?
You froze.
Well, I'm still here, I promise. If I'm talking to you, then you know I'm here. I just might not be moving, or maybe I'm being very still. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. You guys are lame. I'm kidding. I don't mean that. I like you guys. All right. So women had tons of rights. Like when we talk about Sparta, a militaristic society, women had rights. That's just one of the things that we're going to see when we talk about the Aztecs later on. Women are going to have tons of rights because if the men are off fighting, killing each other, someone's got to run the show and have some sensibilities, and it was you ladies. Hooray! As we know, they created the largest empire, continental empire in history, and we have tons of trade. And because of that trade, we have cultural diffusion. I was expressing this yesterday, how the Mongols made so much of the Middle Ages possible, how they made the Renaissance possible with their cultural diffusion. The ideas and technologies that were spread because of the Mongols were tremendously influential and changed the world.
You froze again.
I just haven't said anything. So don't worry, I'm here. All right, moving on. So, the bad. One of the things about the Mongols, remember, Genghis Khan united all those who live under felt tents, meaning he united the tribes of the Mongols. But before that, they were constantly fighting civil wars. Constantly fighting civil wars. Matthew is very, very used to going to war against his cousins. And after Genghis Khan dies, even though we have this Mongolian empire, Matthew is going to get right back to having his civil wars again. It happens all the time. That's part of the reason why under Genghis Khan we see this huge amount of expansion. And we're going to have a lot of expansion under Kublai, but really the Mongol expansion, it grows, but not like at the speed that Genghis Khan had it going. So, and a lot of that was because of the infighting, the civil wars. Another thing that's bad about the Mongols is how they treated China. We've talked about how the Mongols were typically good rulers for the places that they controlled, that they're rather lenient, typically giving freedom, sometimes having less taxes, having less corrupt, and having great governments. But with China, they were terrible to the Chinese. And also the Koreans, I want to add to that because they were grouped in with China in their eyes. They were mistreated. People did not have rights. They were kept out of the government. One of the things that they did in China is they made it so that the government had to be in different languages, Mongolian or Arabic, or even, for like government workers could speak Italian, things like that. And the Chinese weren't even allowed to learn those languages, so they couldn't even take part. So whereas the Mongols let Persians stay in charge, let Russians stay in charge, in China, none of that happened. So they were terrible to the Chinese. And they wind up going and taking tons of the wealth of China and just wasting it, spending, 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 spending. We know that the Mongolian Empire is going to split into the four Khanates: the Khanate of the Golden Horde, the Il Khanate, Chagatai Khanate, and of course, the Yuan Dynasty. And of course, we can't say that spreading the plague was a good thing. Now, they're going to spread the plague in two ways. First off, if they saw, and they're at war, and they saw that Sarah, was starting showing signs of plague, they would take Sarah's body after she dies. They would catapult her over the walls to try to get people sick with that. There's actually a picture. I don't know where it is, but like of the Mongols like catapulting like heads and stuff like that of people who are sick with plague over the walls. But also, because the Mongols have all of this trade going on, the Mongolian ships having rats on it were probably going to go and be the main culprit of spreading of the plague. So what about the crazy aspects? Now, Amer actually hinted upon this earlier. We think half a percentage of the world's male population can trace their lineage back to Genghis Khan. Now you might say, Mr. Kenny, 0.5% is really small. But let's just Google right now. Population of the world. All right, so that's 7.594 billion. So let's just make it easier and say 7.6 billion, okay? So we'll say 7.6. Actually, no, we won't do that. We've got calculators here. So we've got 7.59 billion. Now, let's divide that by 2 because, roughly an equal number of boys and girls. So that's 3,797,000,000 people. Okay, it's a lot of people. Now let's go and multiply that by 0.005 to be half a percentage. So with that then, let's see, I got it. Let's see, I had that times a billion, so 1. So we think almost 200,000 people. So this number, and I think I did my math correctly, can trace their descendage to Genghis Khan. And that's just boys. So if we double that, honestly, that's probably a little more accurate. 3,797,000 people. That's a lot. All descendants. Genghis Khan had over 500 wives and concubines. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Now, most of the time, it was like he went to a city. It was like, all right, I'll marry your princesses so that I'm part of the royal throne. And he's like, all right, wedding's over. See you later. I'm gonna go conquer some more. And didn't even really see them, but still. And we see also something kind of terrible about them. We think 30 to 50 million people died because of the Mongols. I mean, just talk about craziness. And that's our notes today, speaking of talking. So I finally get to stop talking. I'm going to stop the recording. Does anyone have